for us as far as power is concerned, currently top right-hand side of your screen. I did make a mistake earlier. I said stage 4. Obviously incorrect, stage 3, because in my area, the difference between stage 4 and stage 3 is nothing at all. Maybe you feel the same, but it is stage 3. It's expected to be in place until Friday. But very, very concerning is the news that we could have 100 days of blackouts going through winter. Well, let's speak to one of the experts and get some analysis on this. Energy analyst from the University of Johannesburg, from UJ, Professor Hartmut Winkler. Prof, good morning to you. And all of South Africa turned to you with tears in our eyes and candles lit. Is it going to be that bad? Good morning.
Good morning. It could be that bad. The expectation is not going to be as much as that, but that is certainly one of the scenarios that's possible. It really depends on how especially the coal power stations are going to behave themselves over the next couple of months and years. That's really what's determining things, our situation right now. We have a situation where half of the country's coal power stations are currently not in operation due to various breakages, and that's essentially behind it all.
Are you able to tell us at all, Prof, perhaps there's an inside track that you have, what is causing the issue with the coal-fired power stations? Is it the actual coal, or is it a mechanical issue? What is actually causing the problem? Do you know?
Yeah, I don't think it's so much the coal. Occasionally you might have the odd incident where some of it is caused by coal, but by and large, these are breakages. And given that they can already foresee that these breakages are going to be lasting for quite a while, these seem to be at least some underlying breakages that cannot just be fixed in a matter of days. Because when Eskom talks about their 15 gigawatts of power that they're short at the moment, they talk about, I mentioned under the directors made one statement that of those about 4,000 can be sorted out in relatively quick time, whereas the other ones are more long lasting. I suspect that those would be things like the explosion we had at one of the Medupi units a while back. There was also an explosion a few years ago at Duva power station. I think Eskom, I would really like to hear Eskom explain what the situation is at each one of their units. To what extent are these long-term breakages? To what extent are these short-term breakages, which can be fixed in a matter of hours or days? But there seems to be this underlying problem that it's almost like some power stations are currently semi-written off, that there's not even any plans to get them fixed. I suspect that might be because it could be just be too expensive to fix them. But I think that's maybe what people should try and ask under the Rater or Eskom in general the next time they get a chance to speak to them. How many power stations that are off at the moment do they foresee can be brought back to work in relatively short time, and which ones do they know are just not going to become online at all this year? Because I think that's what ultimately the problem is.
Yeah, and obviously we'll try and keep chasing down Eskom and the CEO as well to try and put those sort of questions to the management of Eskom. Prof, help me understand. This is a bit of a long-winded question. I'll try and keep it as simple as possible. I need to try and understand this as I ask it. Is the priority for Eskom, or should the priority for Eskom right now be take the little bit of money they have and try and get new infrastructure in to handle the load, or take that money or some of it and try and get the old infrastructure to a state where it can handle the increase and load? Because they can't do both, is the impression I'm getting. Which way should Eskom be going on this? Fix the old to keep us online, or plan for the future so we can get to the end of load shedding?
Yeah, I think that they'll need to look at this on a case-by-case basis, where it's not too expensive to get something back working again. They definitely should do something. They're not going to get relief from renewables or any other new build in the near future. Renewables, there are some plants which are now going to be built, but that's going to take at least a year until they're finished. They're also hoping that due to private investment, some people might now lease some of the land next to the coal plants in Mpumalanga and build things there. Again, that will take about a year or so. So as far as the next year, there's nothing else they can really do. They just have to try and keep going what is salvageable, and as a result, we are going to be staying in this sort of situation for not just this year, but probably several more years after that. I think what the government needs to do is to really now speed up the delivery of new plants in the hope that in 3 to 5 years down the line, we're going to have a lot more options available. Right now, there's very little else that's there to, such as the renewables. Renewables still form a very small part of electricity generation in this country overall, as opposed to most other countries worldwide. We are lagging far behind. This is where something, if you really move this, you can get a little bit of a difference in about 2 to 3 years' time. But I don't get the sense that the government is pushing this enough. They have an electricity plan at the moment which is already outdated. It's supposed to be updated every 2 years. The last one was passed in 2019. That needs to be updated. Also, they're actually 2 years behind the schedule as per the plan that they're currently working on. So in both regards, yes, we had an announcement about 1 or 2 weeks ago that there are going to be more solar and wind plants now being built, but those will only be ready in 2 to 3 years.
Yeah, it's a long way. It's a long way down the road, isn't it? It's almost a case of you play that game, could have, would have, should have. If we could have back then, we would have, and we should have. Prof, I'm going to leave this as my last question to you. It's always great that we talk about megawatts and power stations going down and possibly coming up. This is a long-term problem, as you say. Even if Eskom got everything it needed, it would be 2 to 3 years. What does someone joining us this morning do in a case like this? I mean, is this something we just have to cope with, or are we all going to be angry citizens throwing things at the TV every single day? What can we actually do to make our lives easier?
Yes, well, I think the people that have the means to do so have already installed some solar panels on their roofs or clearly thinking about this right now. For people that don't have the means to do so, there's very little else they can do other than maybe get practical. I think one thing the country has become better at is that it's the load shedding is more consistent. You now do know that when load shedding is scheduled at a particular hour, so you do get this the electricity going and then coming back again, usually if there's not a municipal problem somewhere. So I think people just, and they've already been doing this, and need to start planning their lives around these blackouts. I think people need to be aware of the schedule in their area, and just look at when are these blackouts going to be, and well, what can I do during that time? Maybe I can schedule my shopping in another suburb during that time. Maybe I can go and see a friend or something during that time. I think that's what people are really already doing, and there's not much else that's available. Other things one can do, just a little lamp or so that works for a couple of hours is extremely helpful in the evenings.
Yeah.
Yes, but that's ultimately there's not much else one can do.
Yeah, it's almost a case of trying to make the best of a bad situation. It's not going anywhere. It's such a South African thing, though, Prof, isn't it? When you're now having a chance to speak to friends, the first thing we talk about is, how was your load shedding schedule? It's such a South African problem to have. That's what we're doing while having a beer. It's so strange. Yeah. Prof, I really appreciate your time, as always, speaking to us. Energy analyst from the University of Johannesburg, Professor Hartmut Winkler, just explaining in very clear details just what is going to be the issue going into winter. It's likely it could happen, 100 days of rolling blackouts. And unfortunately, I wish I had another way of explaining this. There is not much as consumers we can do. If you're fortunate enough, you have a generator, imagine the fuel cost for that. Or if you're very lucky and you have solar, but for the rest of us who don't, candles, and just try and plan your lives around it. You almost feel like you just resigned to the fact this is where we are for the next couple of years. All right.